50,000 prisoners released early in just 2 years on his watch. And I am genuinely shocked, Mr. Speaker, that when given the opportunity to apologise to victims, he very publicly failed to do so. And let me remind him what this is about. Let me quote Fiona Goddard, herself a victim of grooming gangs, who has been brave and open about how his policy will impact her. And she says, "Finding out that they may be released early has completely set me back. I have barely left the house. I feel constantly anxious, frightened, and unsafe. I can barely sleep." This is the impact his policy is having on victims. He refuses to apologise. But why is he pursuing a policy which he must know is both wrong and dangerous?
This is a very serious issue, and the honourable gentleman is experienced in this House. He knows that while he was Home Secretary, they had an early release scheme that set out 10,000 offenders, 10,000 under his... They had 6 schemes within a year. They had a scheme that they announced on the 6th of June 2023, another scheme on the 17th of October 2023, another scheme on the 8th of March 2024, another in April, another in May, another in June, all before the election, and that's why Rishi Sunak, it's rumoured, called the election in the first place.
Mr. Speaker, he will look back on this exchange and I think he will be shocked by how this is coming across. No apology to the victims. No guarantee that paedophiles and rapists will not be released early.
We are 1% of global emissions, 99% are happening elsewhere. And those countries, they are not persuaded by Britain driving itself into poverty, whilst the Secretary of State preaches at them from his pulpit. In fact, they are asking themselves why they should follow the path that Britain is taking when we are such an obvious example of what not to do. A country which is making its energy scarce and expensive, which is deindustrialising and impoverishing its own citizens. So what is the solution from here? First, we must reject decarbonisation by deindustrialisation. That's why we must measure the offshoring of emissions. Get rid of the unilateral carbon tax and stringent targets killing off British industry by repealing the Climate Change Act. They are voting today to increase the cost of aviation and shipping. I'll happily give way on that point.
I'm most grateful to the Shadow Minister give way. Given that we have reduced our carbon emissions by some 54% since 1990, perhaps the Shadow Minister agrees with me that we have led the way. We've done our bit. It's now time for others to do theirs.
Look, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The question is, can we protect the environment and protect the economy and protect living standards? Is what they are passing today going to help us do those things? I would argue it is not. Well, let's talk about it. They are voting today to increase the cost of aviation and shipping when our competitors in Asia, the Middle East and the US are not doing so.
Shabir Ahmed has committed some of the most despicable crimes imaginable. As the ringleader of Rochdale grooming gang, he was responsible for grooming, trafficking and raping children as young as 12 years old. He was jailed in 2012 for 30 counts of child rape. His victims were promised that when he got out of prison, he would be deported back to Pakistan. He has been released from prison, but now we are told that he will not be deported because of a provision in the 1971 Immigration Act. The idea that he might be allowed to stay in this country because of a clause in a decades-old law designed for a completely different time and context is not just absurd, but sickening. As recently as 2023, parole officers concluded that Ahmed poses, and I quote, a very high risk of serious harm to children. How can he possibly be allowed to walk the streets again? When the law produces an outcome which is so clearly so wrong, the law must be changed.
A white man on a night out in Birmingham is assaulted by 2 black men. The police intervene and they arrest the white man, the victim, and they allow the 2 black lads to flee the scene. They then call the victim a dick and they hit his head against a police car whilst they're sticking him in it. They then misrepresent what happened at the event, saying that it was a fight when actually it was an assault. And then they say absolutely nothing is wrong. Then the footage goes viral, as ever, and the police are forced to change their tune. Footage the police actually tried to suppress. Are three simple questions for the police minister. 1. Does she consider this to be another appalling incident of two-tier policing? Number two, will she haul the acting chief constable...
Order, I'm on my feet. Mr Jenrick, one question is normally enough, and I've given you the privilege of two. Minister... No, Mr Jenrick, you know better. Minister.
There is no room in policing for anything other than the police to do their job without fear or favour, and that involves treating everybody equally under the law. Where the police are trained, where they have good leadership, where they are given good support, we believe we can ensure there will be better outcomes for the citizens that we are all here to serve. That is the point of the leadership work that has been done over many months. It's the point of our reform programme. Where things go wrong, of course, we must shine a light on those things. And there has been a huge amount of work over the last few years in terms of policing wearing, for example, body-worn cameras, publishing that evidence so that people can see for themselves, being quicker to speak publicly about what's happened in certain incidents. All those things are important, transparent changes that we are making to our police. But at its core, we need to make sure we are trying to bring people together through the reforms that will give people the policing that we all need.
Our position remains clear, Madam Deputy Speaker. Not one of these dangerous, disgusting people should ever have been included in Labour's early release scheme. And it seems the next leader of the Labour Party, the next Prime Minister, disagrees with the Justice Secretary and Sentencing Minister and agrees with us. His people told the Sunday Times he wants to prevent child sex offenders walking free. His advisers, they say, are working on primary legislation. But they also say, with the Right Honourable Member for Makerfield not taking office before the summer recess, they might not be able to act in time. And this is what's very strange about this dangerous moment. We have a Prime Minister squatting in Downing Street, holding on until the World Cup final, recording videos in empty rooms about his achievements and legacy, pretending he'll intervene to overturn Gerald Quance's red card, with no mandate, no purpose, and no authority. And we have the next Prime Minister, indeed the only candidate to become Prime Minister, saying he disagrees with what the government he's due to lead will do this September, but he lacks the time or the power to do anything about it. That is pathetic. The House is sitting this week and next before the summer recess, and there is plenty of time to act. The government could amend the Sentencing Act and exclude rapists and child sex offenders in emergency legislation. It could lay new commencement regulations, delaying the introduction of the early release scheme, and give the new Prime Minister enough time to get his act together. We've invited the government to do these things in the motion we laid before the House today, and we understand the government will not contest the motion. After voting for the Sentencing Act and against our amendment to exclude sex offenders from the early release scheme, today they have folded. But they still cannot tell us the plan. Will they bring forward emergency legislation? Will they bring forward new commencement regulations?
They should.
We know these ministers are in office, but not in power. So will the Right Honourable Member for Makerfield tell us and tell the victims of these criminals what is going to happen?
Anyone who has travelled or spoken to those who've tried to use the new European entry-exit system understands why the scale of the challenges over summer are so great. Despite all those problems, it has now been reported that a separate new online system to pre-authorise entry to the EU will be delayed until next year. This is a pitiful response, indicative of the problems facing so many UK travellers. There is nowhere near the urgency needed to address the problems facing the EES as we enter the summer holidays. As the President of Airports Council International Europe recently expressed, politicians should stop pretending that the EES is working just fine. It is not. This delusional attitude among EU colleagues is not acceptable, with the EU telling representatives of the travel industry that a full suspension of the system is not needed and not possible. The government must stand behind the interests of British travellers. For instance, there appears to be a ridiculous situation in which a facility built in Dover cannot be activated until the technology for the kiosks, which is the responsibility of the French authorities, is working. My honourable friend, the Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, is right. It is time to apply maximum pressure before chaos arrives at the border at Dover.